It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
So, okay, Brian, so let's talk a little bit about, we've talked about how you have this mindset of starting young. Let's take it even a step further and talk about how do millionaires actually become millionaires?
Yeah. Well, it's really one of those things. We've already kind of alluded to some of this, is that they're very good with their resources. They live on less than they make.
Yep.
They're very efficient with their careers, but also how they allocate their time. So it kind of makes sense for us to kind of pay attention to what millionaires are and what millionaires are not.
That's right. That's the big one.
Because that's a big part, is because I think there's a lot more negative behaviors than there are positives, because we can kind of go through both.
Yep. So the very first thing that we noticed when we looked at what millionaires are not is 78% of workers, this is just analytical fact, 78% of workers right now admitted that they live paycheck to paycheck, from one pay cycle to the next pay cycle. If you have an aspiration to be a millionaire, someone who builds wealth, you are not someone who needs to live paycheck to paycheck. You need to actually be chiseling away a little bit of each paycheck so that in the future, your paychecks will give you a paycheck. That's the way that it works.
What I think is interesting, you had mentioned that you did this in pre-show planning, Bo. You said if people just can understand, we talk about 20, 25%, but let's be real here for a 20-something-year-old, maybe it's only 15%. If they did that just for 5 months, in no time they've already got a full month or 2 months worth of savings built up.
Extra paycheck banked up. It's huge, and it's not hard to do. That's huge.
And this was something, by the way, I want to tell you guys, the financial media got me. They got me, and I was ticked off at it, because there's a brand new headline from Bankrate that nearly 4 in 10 Americans would have to borrow money to cover a $1,000 emergency. So I was like, wait a minute, because guys, we study the same data and research reports every year, and immediately when I saw that, now it was negative everywhere. I saw it on every news channel that I watch in the morning, where they were covering this 4 in 10, because it's a shock and awe type stat that means that people are in horrible financial situation. I was thinking this is a glass half full moment, because I knew the actual number that has been going on for as long as I've been covering the statistic that Bankrate puts out every January is that 60% of Americans can't come up with $1,000. So when I see the number is 4 in 10, I'm like,
that's 40%.
That's a 50% improvement. If it's now 40, that means 20% of the people. This economy is cranking so fast that 20% of the people now have $1,000 improvement over last year. Full-time equivalent Daniel and I pulled up the stat. It is actually the exact same number within 1%. The only thing they did in that headline is that they let you count crazy things like you'll go borrow from a relative or other things. So the number is still just as cruddy as it's always been. 60% of Americans can't come up with $1,000. I went a long way around the hill. That will get us some troll comments. You're right. I could have just published 60%. I want to tell you all that story. Take it.
So if you are a millionaire or an aspiring millionaire, you probably fit into the camp is that you can come up with $1,000 if you had an emergency.
So I want to flip the script, because let's talk about what millionaires are. We already know millionaires, just over 50% of Americans invest. So if you think about that when I hear that stat, that means 50% of Americans, half, don't even have the understanding of the power of compounding interest or letting their army of dollar bills do the heavy lifting for them.
You know, I wish I would have looked up this stat before, but I imagine more than 50% of Americans have access to some sort of retirement account, right? And I would imagine that the majority of our retirement accounts have some sort of employer match. When I see that only just over 50% invest, does that mean that there's just a huge swath of people not even taking advantage, not even getting past step number 2 of the Money Guy order of operations because they're not going out and taking advantage of that free match in their employer's
Well, I grew
plan?
up in one of those households. I mean, my parents were spectacular at the resource management, meaning saving was never the issue. But my parents' idea of investing was CDs.
Yep.
I mean, because it was just an unsophisticated understanding of how money and your army of dollar bills works. That's why we didn't have podcasts. We didn't have YouTube. Can you imagine if my dad was alive right now while we had the Money Guy show out there? I could have lit him up. I mean, while he was young, younger John Preston would be rocking the savings right now. I would have altered my entire family dynamic just if my parents could have this. But they don't. So there is 50% of the population that does not understand the value. Because here's the other thing that I think is lost when we go over that stat of 88 times over. When you look at the money you invest when you're in your 20s and what it becomes by the time you're 65, I think you'll be shocked because we've seen the data. Over 95% of the value is not what you put in, not the principal. It's actually the growth.
The earnings.
So what you put in is only minimal. You essentially planted the seed because when you look at a thing of corn, corn's big. I mean, it's taller, as tall as you and I. There's a reason we make corn mazes. You can't see what's going around. It started with a little kernel, but you don't have the ability to see that visual that this kernel is going to make it where I can't even see through if I will just plant it and let this thing do what it does, unleash the power of the starch that's in that little kernel. You can do the same thing with your money.
I love it. And so if you are one of those little kernels, we thought one of the things that might be valuable for you to see is how do millionaires spend their time? What are the things that they do their time? And we went to one of our favorite resources on this. You know, if you've listened to the show for any amount of time, you know that The Millionaire Next Door is just a huge thing that we love. Well, then there was a revision by Dr. Stanley's daughter, Sarah, and she did the next Millionaire Next Door, where she kind of looked at, okay, what do millionaires do? How do they spend their time? Where do they put their efforts? And if you can kind of, again, remember, you are the sum of the 5 people that you spend time around. So if you think about the way that millionaires spend their time, maybe there's something you could take away and discern from that on how you ought to think about spending your time.
And what I like about this is you pull up this deliverable. This is actually on our website. You know, we can if you go to moneyguy.com, on our resource page, we have this. You know, because when Sarah was on our show, if you want to go check out that show, she shared, it's in the book. It's in, I meant to bring my book and hold it up.
It's sitting on the conference table right now.
It's sitting on the conference table from the pre-show planning. But Daniel, fortunately, has given us the so you can see all the pertinent data. But Bo, go through kind of these things because I think people will be surprised to see, just like Sarah's father, Dr. Thomas Stanley shared, millionaires are very efficient with how they allocate their resources and their time, and this shows it.
That's exactly right. So they looked at what the average American does versus what the millionaire does. The average American works about 32 hours per week. I was actually kind of surprised by this. The average millionaire works about 38 hours. What this told me is to be a millionaire, to be someone who has financial success, it's not about going out and working 90, 100 hours a week. It's about mastering that behavioral piece. You can work a normal work week, but if you can master saving and deferred gratification, it sets yourself up for success.
Now, I feel like one of our trolls on YouTube because there are usually 26,000, I'm exaggerating, comments trying to explain the difference between median and averages.
Sure.
But it is one of those things I want to go ahead and tell my 20-year-olds and even early 30-year-olds, it sucks in the beginning. So your number probably is going to be bigger than 38.4. I know for myself, there's a reason they were giving us so much comp time. I was definitely working 50 to 60 hours a week in my 20s. I mean, it's just a fact. I do think there's probably this number is skewed by workers who are younger giving more. There's even, I remember associates had to have so many billable hours, whereas partners just didn't because they're working on vision and other things. It doesn't mean the partners aren't worth every penny of what they've done. It's just that their focus is now different. It's more on vision planning. It's more on growth and marketing, whereas when you're young, you kind of have to work.
You can see that the average American spends about 2 hours per week reading. The millionaire spends about 5.5 hours. I thought this was interesting. On social media, the average American, 14 hours. That's 2 hours a day on social media. Average millionaire, 2.5 hours. We'll see as time goes on if that number changes at all. Average American exercises 2.5 hours a week. The average millionaire actually doubles that. They recognize that this body, you only get one of them. We probably ought to take care of it. Average American spends about 3.5 hours per week taking care of family. Millionaires spend 8.5. They focus on relationships and working and caring for others. Average American spends almost 2 hours per week on video games. Millionaires spend less than an hour. They're not spending a lot of time on video games, doing that sort of thing.
Kids will fix that too.
Kids will certainly
because I love
that.
video games, but babies blow up your ability to play video games.
And then the last one, time spent sleeping. The average American sleeps almost 9 hours. That is just befuddling to me, but I have little kids. That makes sense. Average millionaire sleeps a little over 7.5 hours. So not a huge discrepancy there, but just something to be aware of.
So all these things point to the fact that you've got to be good with your time. You've got to be good with how you invest your resources. You get one life. Bo talked about the exercising. There is a reason these millionaires, they figured out something that the rest of us kind of take for granted. We're not assured tomorrow is going to happen. We just had the whole Kobe thing. I mean, I had a whole text chain with some buddies. Like, oh my gosh. I mean, because this dude is 41 years old. He is starting to rock the entrepreneurial business world. Nothing is guaranteed. So a lot of millionaires, myself included, we exercise not because we love it. I actually hate every minute. I'm not like you. I hate every minute. The best part of exercising is the drive home. But I do. I reflect that number is because I don't want to leave this party too early. So don't take it for granted, guys. Every one of these behaviors, I use exercising as an example, but it really is. You need to think about every dollar in your army, meaning every dollar you make. Am I maximizing its opportunity? Attack this thing so that you're not squandering and you losing decades that could be something that's creating something really incredible for your household and your family.
If you really like this deliverable, we actually make this available on our website. If you haven't had a chance to check out our resource page, go to moneyguide.com, click on resources. You can go download this deliverable, take it, to work, show it to all your friends and family, and show them, hey, here's some things that we ought to be thinking about in terms of how we spend our time.
Now, we did something fun because remember, this is a segment that we're focusing on to give yourself permission to spend as you're trying to save. It's step 2 is you're saving 20 to 25% of your income. We thought it would be a fun exercise to run around the office and ask everybody here, what are some of the quirky things you've done to save money? Now, look, this is entertaining for us, but it's going to be great for you guys too. It'll scratch that itch to let you see who the team members are behind the curtain as well. And obviously, you're pulling up, Bo, that I've done this a little out of order. So I'm going to let you fix this record and correct where I'm wrong on this.
No, I just thought this was interesting because we were talking about time. And I think, again, this just goes to show, again, we're talking about if you want to be a millionaire by the time you get to 65, again, how powerful starting only can be. At 20, you only have to save $95 a month. And then at 55, you have to save $5,000. But we get troll comments all the time of folks saying $1 million today isn't worth what $1 million is going to be in the future. So you guys are always saying this to me. You're always giving me this $1 million thing. We said, okay, we hear you. We are going to respond. We hear you. Well, we did some research to figure out what the new $1 million was. And this is what we discerned. The new $1 million goal that we used to have back when the Millionaire Store was written is $3 million, right?
Well, and full disclosure, Sarah, when we interviewed her, I think she used the number of $1.5 million.
Okay.
But us being who we are, we said, let's go over the top. All these trolls are saying $1 million's not good enough. I know $3 million is rocking it because even if you are just a mediocre investor, you make 5% a year, have a 5% withdrawal rate. I mean, you can quickly see that's 150 G's forever.
Yep.
I mean, so this is completely something that's doable for a lot of people. But when you see the numbers, because a lot of people are going to look at this, what it takes to be a millionaire, they go like, man, it really gets kind of freaky if you think about I have to save $1,300 a month when I'm 45 years old, or when I'm 50, I have to save $2,500, and $5,000 just seems like craziness. But 95, 158, 270, 452, even the 780, all that seems reasonable, and that's just to get to $1 million.
That's right.
Flip the switch, show them what we're talking about for $3 million.
So yeah, this is what I think is incredible. If you're someone who's 20, you say, you know what, I don't want to just be a millionaire. I want to be a multi-millionaire. I want to get to $3 million by the time I retire. $286 a month.
You can do that.
$286 a month is all it takes to get to $3 million. For a 25-year-old, it's $474 a month.
By the way, you know what I like about the 25-year-old math? Roth IRA contribution.
Oh, I love it.
How much can you put in a Roth this year?
$6,000 per year.
Divide that by 12, Bo.
$500 per month.
Wow. Imagine if you could have a tax-free $3 million when you get there. That would be powerful.
That's beautiful. If you're a 25-year-old and you're just maxing your Roth out every single year from now until the time you get to retirement, you're setting yourself up to be a multimillionaire. That's beautiful.
Powerful stuff.
At 35, it goes to $1,300. At 40, $2,300. At 45, $4,000. And then at 50 and 55, if you start from a dead stop and you're trying to get to $3 million, it's going to be difficult. So perhaps your number isn't $3 million. But we just want to show you this is attainable. So don't come at us saying, "Oh, $1 million doesn't do." Okay, save more. You can do it. It is possible. It is available. It is accessible.
So this vision, this is the power of money. You can't fight the math. The younger you are, the less excuses you should have. But remember, we're talking about when do you have permission to spend. Yep. What you're trying to do is get to 20 to 25% savings rates. Because guess what happens after you get at 20 to 25%? You can kind of go take a deep breath, relax, know you've got an automated plan that's working for you, and then kind of unleash and go through some of those other financial order of operations where you can enjoy life and not feel guilty about it. Permission to spend.